This is the Volvo XC60, and in this video we're going to tell you everything that you need to know about this large SUV. And if you want to save £6,000 on one right now, then go to whatcar.com and watch this video to find out exactly how good the car is and what are the best engines, trims and options to go for. Now, the first Volvo XC60 was the manufacturer's biggest seller, and this second generation model has continued where that one left off. So in the first 6 months of this year, Volvo posted record sales numbers, and leading the charge was the new XC60, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's any good. Now, it's a large SUV, which means that its rivals are cars like the BMW X3, the Land Rover Discovery Sport and the Audi Q5. And in terms of styling, well, it's kind of up to you whether it looks better or worse than those cars. But if you like other new Volvos, then you are certainly not going to be disappointed by the XC60 because they all have a very, very similar look and design, both in the exterior and the interior, which we'll look at in a minute. But where does this car sit in Volvo's lineup? Well, for SUVs, you've got the smaller XC40, and then the XC60 is above that. And at the top of the lineup, you have the 7-seat XC90. This car actually shares the same underpinnings as the bigger XC90. However, obviously this is shorter and several £1,000s cheaper. And also, while you can have 7 seats in the XC90, the XC60 is only available with 5. But anyway, there's lots of competition to compare this car to. So to start off with, we're just going to look inside the car. Well, the fit and finish in here is top drawer. Volvo can certainly count itself among the best in the business here. And the reason this is so impressive as well is that it's just as classy and as elegant as the bigger, more expensive XC90. And there's really nice details throughout as well, like this metal trim, which could look and feel pretty cheap and nasty, but it absolutely doesn't. It feels really good quality. You've got some knurling on the air vents and the volume control as well. Now, all right, maybe these plastics aren't particularly inspiring, but another nice detail is having the Swedish flag imprinted on the trim over there. And it's also nice having one on the driver's seat as well, to just remind you that you're not just sat in another German car. So if you're looking for an SUV, you probably want that tall, commanding driving position, and this car absolutely delivers that. But there is still plenty of adjustment in the steering wheel and in the seat to fine-tune your driving position and get comfortable to how you'd want it. And all seats have electric height adjustment, but on Momentum and R design, you'll have to manually move them forwards and change the angle of the backrest as well. In terms of the view, it really is excellent. There's not many complaints at all. You've got these thin pillars which don't really get in the way much at junctions, and you also have big windows, big door mirrors, and around the back, massive side windows, a really good over the shoulder view. And also you get front and rear parking sensors as standard, but you can also get a reversing camera and a 360-degree bird's eye view camera, which shows you the car from above. So that's really helpful for parking. And you can also get pilot assist parking, which is Volvo's semi-autonomous system, which can help steer you into supermarket spaces or parallel park the car for you, which is impressive. Now, you also get some digital dials as standard, and you know, they look clean, minimalist, pretty slick. But when you compare it to Audi's virtual cockpit system, then this just isn't quite as good. And the reason the Audi's is better is because it's got a higher level of customization and a bit more flexibility. So in a Q5, you can change the driver display so it mainly shows the sat-nav map and it makes all the other dials smaller. But in the Volvo, you don't have the option for that, so that's why it's not quite so good. And also in the Volvo, lots of the features are hidden within this infotainment system. At first glance, Volvo's sensor system seems fabulous. A sharp-looking tablet-style 9-inch touchscreen with swipeable menus like an iPad. In practice, it's rather clunky, often taking time to react to commands, and with numerous menu layers and small icons, it's very distracting to use on the move. Plus, you've got to pay extra for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Even though it does have voice control, Audi's MMI system and BMW's iDrive are much better, thanks to their rotary dial control solutions. As for the space up front, you have absolutely loads of it. Okay, if you're going to get a tape measure out, then a Land Rover Discovery Sport has slightly more room, but the XC60 is still massive, so you shouldn't have any problems. Now, the storage on offer is pretty good, big cubby hole here, and it's also nice that you have these compartments which are nicely hidden there. So you've got a couple of cup holders, you can see, somewhere for the key, but it's nice that you have the option to just cover them up, and it looks quite sleek and elegant with that. So very impressive up front, but what's it like in the back? Well, the back is pretty impressive. You can see, even with an optional panoramic sunroof, there's absolutely loads of headroom, and knee room's great, loads of leg room. You can stretch out pretty easily, and there's loads of space for your feet under this driver's seat too. And it's also a broad interior, so if you've got 3 adults sat side by side, then they should be relatively comfortable. Although if you are sat in this middle seat, you've got a big hump in the floor. But can you see, look at this, a hidden 3-pin plug back there. I wonder if you could charge your plug-in hybrid battery off that. Probably not, I wouldn't try that. But still, I suppose useful to have in the back there. And also, Volvos have by far the most interesting middle seat compartments of any cars on sale. So you have this flat storage space for I don't know what. You have another hidden, randomly sized storage space thing. But the best bit are the cup holders there. And also you have a ski hatch, which you can't actually open from this side. You've got to open it from the boot. But again, pretty useful if you have some skis or a fishing rod or something else like that. So overall, very spacious, very comfortable back here. The rear seats you do get are 60/40 split folding, and they can be dropped at the touch of a button if you fork out for the optional convenience pack, which saves you the job of pulling manual levers. But it's a shame the seat backs aren't split in a 40-20-40 layout like you can get on a Q5, X3 and Discovery Sport. Now the boot isn't as good as the best cars in the class for practicality. So compared to a Q5 and an X3, there's around 10% less space on offer in the back here. And you can see it's mainly because it's quite a shallow boot. So there's still a reasonable amount of space for a family's luggage, but under the boot floor, you've just got space for a spare wheel. But still, it's reasonably practical, if not quite as good as the very best cars in this class. But how expensive is the Volvo XC60 and what's it like to run one? Well, these are the key things that you need to know about buying and owning a Volvo XC60. The XC60 is priced closely against rivals like the Q5, X3 and Mercedes GLC. PCP finance deals are very competitive too. The diesel D4 offers really low CO2 emissions, and the hybrid diesels B4 and B5 also have low CO2 emissions and impressive fuel economy figures, especially compared to an equivalent Audi Q5. If you are after a company car, it's worth considering the T8 plug-in hybrid. It has the lowest CO2 emissions in the lineup, which results in lower benefit-in-kind tax. A word of warning though, it will only really save you money in fuel if you can make use of its electric range. So you'll have to keep the battery charged up, because when it's empty, it's not actually that efficient. The XC60 comes with a 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty, as well as 3-year paintwork cover and 12 years of cover against rust, which is good, but not necessarily impressive because you can expect all of that on its large premium SUV rivals. You can find some of the most advanced safety features in the class in this XC60. Safety experts Euro NCAP gave it the full 5 stars with a brilliant 98% for adult occupant safety. Automatic emergency braking is standard on all trims, and it can even help you swerve around obstacles and back onto the correct side of the road. Blind spot monitoring is available as part of a pack that also includes adaptive cruise control. Interesting side point, the previous first generation XC60 actually had its best sales year in its final 9th year of production, which is very strange, and perhaps down to the big discounts available at the time. For the best deals on the new XC60, go to whatcar.com. So, what's the XC60 like on the road? Well, the first thing to talk about are the engines. Now, the diesels start with the D4, which is a 2-litre, 188 brake horsepower engine. And the pace that it offers doesn't throw you back in your seat, but there's certainly enough mid-range punch to make motorway speeds and overtaking occasionally pretty simple and easy going. Now, Volvo's having a bit of an engine shake-up at the moment, and it's making things a bit confusing. Essentially, all of its standard petrol and diesel engines will be replaced by mild hybrids with a B badge, even the D4. So for petrols at the minute, there's a 2-litre T4 with 187 brake horsepower, and there's also the 306 brake horsepower T6. But the T4 is only available in one entry-level trim, while the punchy T6 will be mildly hybridised, if that's even a term, in due course. Still, the petrols we have driven don't have the mid-range grunt of the diesels, so we'd stick with an oil burner for the XC60. So while the D4 is front-wheel drive only, those 2 other diesels are all-wheel drive. So the B4 has 194 brake horsepower, which is more than the D4, but because it's heavier, you don't really notice that extra power. The B5 gets 242 brake horsepower, so that is noticeably more powerful, and you do feel a bit of the extra pace that it offers, but still, on balance, it's the D4 that's the best choice in the lineup. There is also a range-topping plug-in hybrid T8 with an electric range that should be able to get you almost to 30 miles. But if you're after a plug-in hybrid large SUV, we'd sooner look at the quiet and comfortable Audi Q5 55 TFSI E. The standard fit steel suspension is pretty well suited to UK roads, so with that, the X60 is fairly comfortable. Speed bumps and larger bumps are nicely absorbed and doesn't really upset the car too much, although bigger expansion joints and sharp, ragged potholes do send a bit of a thump through the car. Our design XC60s are quite popular, and that trim level brings a lowered, stiffer suspension setup. And normally with things like that, we'd say, oh, it completely ruins the ride. But with the XC60, it doesn't. It's still relatively comfortable, although given the choice between the two, we would still stick with the standard setup. You also have the option of air suspension, and on some rivals that can completely transform the car, but it doesn't really on the XC60. So considering it costs quite a lot of money, we'd stick with the standard setup. It does though only take a couple of corners to realise that the XC60 isn't necessarily a driver's machine. So in a similar way to the Land Rover Discovery Sport, which isn't a great car to drive quickly, the XC60 pitches and wallows and generally just doesn't feel that tight, and the steering doesn't really key you into the road either. So there are other cars in this class that just offer a more sporty experience, like the Jaguar F-Pace and the Audi Q5. They both just have tighter control and more direct steering. When all's said and done though, if you just want something that's light and easy to move around town and go on the motorway with and gently amble around, then the XC60 is perfectly fine. So the XC60 might not be the best large SUV to drive, but inside it's classy, roomy, and it's well equipped too. So compared to its rivals, it's still a strong choice. However, if you move up the trim levels and raise the price, it becomes a bit less appealing. So now we've told you everything about the car and how it compares to its rivals, what we're going to do now is summarise what's the best engine, which is the best trim, and which options should you go for. The engine to go for is the 2-litre 188 brake horsepower D4 diesel for its blend of performance and economy. As for the trims, we'd stick with entry-level Momentum. It gives you all the essentials and quite a bit more on top. Climate control, keyless start, cruise control, automatic lights and wipers, and heated leather seats all come as standard. You'll also need some metallic paint too, and there's also more expensive premium metallic paint if you want to stand out a bit more. Heated front seats are standard, but heated rear seats look pretty good value on the options list. If you regularly carry around people in the back and you like them, it might be worth considering. Now, please excuse my broken cable, but you should definitely go for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And it's a shame that something like that isn't standard on a car as expensive as this. You could also consider the 360-degree camera if you do a lot of parking in town. But if you want to spend a bit less, you can just get the reversing camera. Now, if you've bought a Volvo and you have a beige interior, then surely you need a beige key as well. IntelliSafe Pro for adaptive cruise control with Pilot Assist, which is Volvo's term for its system which helps steer the car in a straight line on the motorway. It also includes blind spot monitoring. So if you want to save a load of money on an XC60, then go to whatcar.com and make sure that you're subscribed to our channel with the bell icon turned on so that you can get notifications for all of our videos that come out every week.